Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of eCoffee with Experts. I am your host, Matt Fraser. And today we have a very special guest on the show, Justin Allen. Justin is the Chief Operating Officer at What Works Studio, an award-winning digital marketing agency. His leadership and vision have been instrumental in the success of the company. What's even more impressive is Justin's diverse background. He is a self-taught electrical engineer and active musician, and has done production work for live events, which has given him a unique perspective and appreciation for the creative process. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Justin to the podcast. Justin, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt.
Hey, no problem. Hey, what were your hobbies and interests growing up, and how have they influenced your career path?
Yeah, I totally was into music and writing. I had visions of myself being a wandering bohemian, minstrel,
Hmm.
portrait poet, all of the above. And yeah, I got to chase some of those things. I actually tell people I'm a recovering bohemian.
Cool. Is that how your high school students would describe you? Or what would they say? How would they describe you?
I was voted most unique in high school, so I don't know,
Cool.
but
Oh, right on. Right
yeah.
on. What was the turning point in your life that made you want to become an entrepreneur?
So I was working for a startup, a medical device company that was out of Johns Hopkins in an incubator. And when I met my wife, she was just starting, or shortly after we were dating, she was just starting this agency, which at the time was a one-woman shop. And
Oh, yeah.
I was looking at becoming a writer. She had started this agency, and together we collaborated. And it was her idea to start. We were looking at different ways to leverage the internet to start companies, so
Oh,
we
yeah.
didn't have to work. Whereas when she was working in PR, she became familiar with a publication out of DC called Biz Now, which got a lot of clout and eventually was sold. It was a commercial real estate online, I think it was just an email magazine at the time. And looking at all the different internet businesses and how people were creating businesses and leverage from digital tools and not necessarily capital kind of inspired us to go look out at the universe and try to figure out how to launch a business. And I think it was her idea, looking at Biz Now, to start What Weekly magazine. At the time, I was doing implantable surgical devices that are compatible with MRI environments. The design that I had worked on had been licensed, and research had stopped, development had stopped, and I had a lot of free time when it was full salary. So we took that idea of hers and we launched a magazine together, which was What Weekly magazine, which published for 7 years. It was incredibly exciting. It was a ton of fun. We hit right when DSLRs became ubiquitous and the internet opened up its bandwidth to allow for big, beautiful photos. This was before or right around the time Hipstamatic, or it was pre-Instagram. Was it Hipsta? I forget what that app was. The one that came out before Instagram, but Instagram eventually overtook it. It was before we had photography everywhere and photography driven social media platforms. So the magazine took off and super exciting. But what we realized was that media in that vein, especially hyperlocal media, which is why a lot of these types of publications went away, is really hard to monetize in any substantial way. But what we saw was that it was driving business to her one woman marketing shop where she was doing marketing and PR. And I was helping out a little bit here and there with the marketing stuff. But once we realized that we were basically building a content marketing engine, the magazine,
Yeah.
you can see, I started putting my energy into the agency and started helping her build.
Wow. So the magazine was driving business for you for marketing engagements.
And we didn't,
Smart.
at the time, I don't think we had actually heard of content marketing. There was the understanding that if we had this magazine, that it could lead to business for what she was doing on the marketing side. But
Yeah.
I think the idea of having a concerted content marketing play wasn't necessarily what we were thinking. We were thinking more email marketing, but it ended up being a lot more successful than what we understood in the way that we developed it at first. Really, the magazine was an act of love and passion for publishing.
That's pretty amazing. What do you consider to be your greatest success in your career so far, and why?
Ah, wow, that's a big question. I think if you go to our website, we have a lot of really awesome case studies.
Uh-huh.
One of our campaigns, the Be More Gives More campaign, we raised over $5 million in a single day for local nonprofits in the Mid Atlantic, and that
Wow.
was in the Baltimore region, and that was enshrined in a permanent exhibit on philanthropy in the Smithsonian. Our Mr. Trash Wheel persona that we developed for Healthy Harbor in Baltimore generated hundreds of thousands of blog posts, articles,
Mm.
almost too many to count number of earned media hits without any pitching, became Discovery Channel's #1 story of the year,
Wow.
and generated a global audience on a very small budget. And then with Light City Baltimore, we're really proud of that. We generated millions of dollars of economic impact for the state of Maryland. Year one was the largest amount of grant money given to the arts community in one go up until that point. So all those things are amazing to look back at, but the
Yeah.
truth is that some of that was luck and good and having the right timing
Mhm.
and not and what we didn't know and not putting blinders on and not limiting ourselves in our scope and imagination. But
Yeah.
where we are right now is scaling and creating replicable processes and a
Mm.
scalable company, and doing it without all of the flash that we had in
Mm.
years is also a big success for me as an
Yeah.
element in managing a team and finding success, but it's doing it in a quieter way,
Yeah.
which I think where we are right now, I think building a scalable company has been really rewarding.
Yeah. How instrumental is it, do you think, and important, if you will, to have proper SOPs in place in a system? For instance, McDonald's has a system. They plug people in the system, makes money. Michael Gerber, and I mentioned this book quite a few in the episode in the podcast. Michael Gerber's book, E-Myth Revisited, which is recommended by many different gurus, if you will, to read, talks about creating the systems before you even start the business. How has the development of those systems been impacted your business and growth and mindset and culture?
It's critical. You can't grow past a certain point without processes in place. It's the difference between having a mom and pop's organization and having a company that operates as an entity on its own.
Yeah. What are some of the strategies you've used to develop those and put them in place?
Right now, I am interviewing. I've gotten to the point where we have several in place. We use a backend platform called Teamwork. It's like Asana and
Oh, yeah.
Monday, those things. Right now, I am interviewing a process consultant to come in and to help me take it to the next level. We have lots of
Right on.
processes, and things, but I need to know what I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing in a second pair of eyes to help facilitate that next phase of process integration. And we
Oh,
also
that's
use the
awesome.
as well.
Oh, yeah. The traction methodology of running a business. That's something we as a company use as well. How do you approach, just curious, risk taking and decision making in your agency?
In the past, we were probably less risk averse, which allowed us to create home run case studies, which are great to have as a bedrock for our agency. But moving forward, evaluating risk is a case by case basis where it really is just about a conversation and listing the pros and cons and determining does the risk is the return worth the risk? Is it aligned with our long term goals? Is it something that we need to do? Is it something that we can stop and think about for a little while? I'm at this point in my career, I'm a big fan of sleeping on it and
Yeah.
that level of discernment before making any big decisions.
That's a valuable nugget right there. Sleeping on a big decision and weighing all the pros and cons is probably one of the best things to do. I would totally agree with you. Sleep on it. Nothing like a good night's sleep to refresh yourself and wake up in the morning and have a better look at the understanding. What does it mean to have a strong brand message, and why is it important for businesses? You mentioned some of the brands, or key things you've created, the Mr. forgive me, the Mr. Trash, I think Mr. Trash Wheel, yes. And things like that. That's pretty
Hey,
interesting, but
it's today more so than ever being able to stand out of the noise and position and differentiate from others like you or others who, who might be confused for whatever it is that you're trying to do is, I think it's super critical for companies that are trying to be seen. It's not necessarily critical for every single company. B2B companies, enterprise B2B companies oftentimes will have a very vanilla, very safe sort of brand message, and they're really going out more off of service. If you're scrappy and competitive and you're trying to create points of leverage, having a very clear brand message is critical, and that smaller companies can take risks with it, right? You likely won't take risks, but to stand out of the crowd, I totally recommend. I wish more of my clients would allow us to take larger risks with how they present themselves. So
yeah.
that opportunity to do that if you're so inclined.
Yeah. I think it's one of my mentors, indirect mentors, has said boring marketing gets boring results. As Dan Kennedy. And people tend to want to be vanilla and safe and not take a strong position or stance on something. When really, if you try to be everything to everyone, the results that you will get will not be very good. They'll be very boring. Right. Case in point that I'm thinking of right now is there's a gentleman who started a e-bike drop shipping business, and he was trying to target anyone and everyone who wanted to buy an e-bike. Then he changed his messaging to only target, and his messaging and his pictures and his descriptions, everything to only target hunters. So he eliminated 90% of the market and only focused on the 10. And his sales went to $3 million a year in AR. So $3 million in annual revenue. And it's an amazing story. So he's just knew he figured out who he wanted to target, a specific demographic and persona, created that persona, and then created the messaging. So yeah, you're right. Vanilla and shooting everywhere isn't going to get you anywhere. What do you think some common mistakes are that businesses make when crafting their brand message?
I think for smaller companies, not having a brand message is a mistake. A lot of organizations don't really think about their messaging until a certain point. I think having messaging from the beginning so that you're clearly defining the parameters of your business and conveying that, or even nonprofits, conveying that consistently across all of your channels is critical. I think generally, and I think this is an old school way to think about marketing is, I think generally not listening to customers, not exhibiting empathy, and having your message be about you rather than having it being how it pertains to the customer and the audience. But there's some of a value proposition baked into that. I think that be a lot more effective.
Yeah. It's amazing that you say that, because I even had a car dealer that I worked for, and their tagline focused on them rather than on the potential customer. And I even I won't get into I even reworded it to say the same thing, but have the focus on the customer, but they didn't like it. And so it's really hard when people hire you for your expertise and then don't take your advice because they think they know better. It's a plumber comes into your house. You hire that plumber you don't tell the plumber how to fix the pipe.
Was it an owner operated business, the car dealership?
Yes.
Yeah.
Family owned.
Yeah. That is a challenging place to be, is when the owner operator is in the mix, because that brand and branding and all of those things become, even with companies that the owner operator isn't involved, but especially with these kinds of company, branding and brand message and all those kinds of things becomes more like marketing therapy than what is logical. I had a branding exercise take a year. That was a family owned business. So
took a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was branding and website, but still.
Yeah, no, I understand. I've been there, done. I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay. So what role do the target audience personas play in crafting a brand message, an effective brand message?
It's again, I think that's just a critical component.
Yeah.
If you understand who you're talking to, then you understand how you can speak to them. You would speak much differently to a suburban mother than you would say a hunter,
Mm, absolutely.
maybe a corporate executive, all of those,
Yeah.
the colloquialism and
Yeah.
the way that you connect with those people, engage with those people in their own language and their own tone, being sure to bring in the things that they care about into the conversation. All of that is wrapped up in those audience personas. We develop them pretty much for every plan that we do for people.
Yeah, it's absolutely critical. I feel like we're just getting started and there's so many more questions, but I know we're coming to the top of the hour for time wise. And I would love to invite you to be back on the show for a second episode to talk about the second part of developing a brand message. In the meantime, how can our listeners connect with you online if they choose to do so?
Sure. You can always go to our website, whatworkstudio.com. Yeah, just drop me an email. Justin at
Fantastic. And you're on LinkedIn as well?
I am.
Okay, great. We'll make sure to put that information, your website and LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Other than that, I just want to thank you for being here. And again, I really would like to invite you to come back and do the second part.
Sure.
Right on.